Good day, everyone. This is Steve Hess, Director of User Experience at BOM, and welcome to today's webinar. This is, I think, number 17 in the series. Today's topic is BOM types, which is best for you. So we'll be spending a few minutes on that. We'll be making this webinar as well as the slide that will be available later today as usual. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. As you know, my goal is always to make these things brief. Let's give a little bit of business here in the beginning. Try to make this a 20-minute or less discussion about BOM types and their use and what's best for you and when you should use which type. And we're going to go over what those types are in just a moment. We'll do a live demo, and as always, this is not intended to be a deep dive into any sort of theory, and it's also intended to be a marketing-free environment. So let's cover a couple of quick definitions. Bills of material, part number, and assembly. These are, sort of the standard definitions that we like to begin each webinar with. Most importantly, I think in this case, part number we'll be discussing will be an unambiguous identifier of a part or assembly. So let's take a look at the BOM types that we'll be discussing today. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to focus on 4. There are many more types and names and styles, and all those kind of terms can be and often are interchanged. So if you're using something different in your company, sort of think about it in terms of that. I'm going to propose, 4 types here that are listed here. And what these are not per se are, the classic E-BOMs and M-BOMs. Those two, E-BOM and M-BOM, imply a certain function of for a bill of material, and I'm not going to cover that today. What I am going to cover today are what we're calling the types or styles, I think is the word we'll use for the rest of this webinar. And they are, as you see, parts list, single, multi-level, and flattened. The first 2 I think we're probably maybe familiar with, although we're going to dive into them a little deeper. Multi-level is often called indented or structured, and tends to follow an organized indented format, which we'll look at, and then flattened. And flattened is also sometimes referred to as a quantity or purchasing BOM. The purpose of flattened BOM is to bring bring all the items into a single list with the quantities, and so that can be used for purchasing. So we'll dive into that a little bit more as well. So, okay, so why do I even care about which BOM style I'm going to use? And the simple answer to that is the method is important, the style is important based on what information and to whom you're trying to communicate that. We're going to break down each one of those 4 styles and give some examples where you might use each one of those. I think you'll quickly see that a parts list or a multi-level BOM communicate different information, different intents on the part of the reader. So we'll dive down into each one of those and see what their various use cases are. So let's get started. Again, today's webinar is intended to be brief and to the point. Let's start with parts list. A parts list is literally a list of all the parts that are in your product, regardless of kind of where they appear in the structure. So if you were to say, hey, look, I need a bag of all the parts so I can build my wireless router, this is what would be in the bag. So the typical usage for this is maybe kitting or maybe some manufacturing preparation. Maybe you're kind of loading some assembly lines. You might be doing some inventory actions, maybe checking some quantities on hand and other things. And this may be a good jumping in point for an RFQ or request for quote that you might be sending out in the beginning of a product design. So parts list, literally a list of parts that are used in building of your product. And we're going to cover an example of that shortly. We're going to build each one of these, by the way, in the live demo. Single level. Okay, this is another one that sometimes is misunderstood. If I take a single level BOM at the top level, in other words, I'm sitting at what we call a buy level. This is the product level of my bill of material. Product level BOM, single level BOM for my wireless router, in this case only has four lines in it. It's the top and bottom cases, the circuit board that's inside, and the screws that hold it together. So some typical use for this might be on the shop floor. Maybe I buy the circuit board, I buy it outsourced and it kind of comes in as a complete assembly, and I'm going to want to put it together. Some other places that might be related to this are this may appear on the face of a drawing that maybe is used for assembly instructions. This might also be a good BOM for showing on my website. Certainly don't need to show every component that sits on that circuit board, and maybe for spare parts. The single level view may fit a good spare part model for you guys. So this, again, it might be something that goes in a handbook that shows what the various spare parts are. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that at the single level, the thing that we're focusing on most are subassemblies, some fasteners, and their quantities. Okay, multi-level. This is where it starts to get interesting. A multi-level bill of material is structured in dents based on the various subassemblies. It may be generated automatically by our CAD system. It might also be managed in Excel or some other kind of CAD management tool. But the purpose of a multi-level is to combine the details of each of the subassemblies into a single entry point, so I can start at the top, excuse me, and work up and down my product structure. So, why is that important? Well, in this case, in this wireless router, although it appears simple, there are a couple of dissimilar activities that are going to come together in this. This might be electrical, it might be mechanical. We may even be keeping track of a software BOM that might appear as a pointer to my code in GitHub or some other place where I compile my software. So I think about coming in at a top level bill of material, multi-level bill of material, and working my way down as being able to go from the highest level of abstraction, that's the product, all the way down to some very low level component level, the antenna that has the information about the vendor and all of those other things, and working my way up and down that structure. We're going to build one of those as well. And then finally, something that I call a flattened BOM. Again, this might be called I've worked in places where we call this a quantity view or a quantity BOM. And the purpose of the flattened BOM is really for order planning and purchasing. So the flattened view or the flattened BOM goes all the way down through my structure. It's typically built from a multi-level BOM, works its way all the way down through my structure, creates a single line item for a single entry for each item, regardless of where that item appears. So in my example here, I've got 4 screws that appear somewhere. I've got 2 others down here at line number 13. And these may appear at different locations within the bill of material. The 2 screws on line 13, one of them might appear on the board, one of them may appear on the feet of the chassis. They may not be in any common location at all, but they are the same screw. So when my planning or purchasing person goes to buy these, I want to make sure that I bring them all together and buy them in the total quantity. Another advantage is some examples that I've seen of where this really would have been helpful in some of my earlier career was, I might have 5 or 10 of these screws at one location in my product structure, and another 5 or 10 somewhere else, and we end up ordering 5 or 10 of those rather than 20 or 30. So we haven't taken a planning BOM, flattened BOM view of it. I might not get that economy of scale for that quantity discount, and this becomes more important as I'm buying more expensive things, caster wheels or motors or hinges, things that there might be dispersed out through my product. I want to bring them together in a single line and buy just and buy that one quantity for those. So here's a couple of videos and some help on this slide. I'll share this with you. There's a video on multi-level and as well as some more information there. So, okay, we're about 10 minutes in. I'd like to jump into a quick live demo right now. And I've got my wireless router open. I'm using SolidWorks here. This could be any CAD system. And I've just sort of set some visibility here so we can see that we've got some parts and we've got some parts inside. So I'm going to use OpenBOM, which is a bill of material management tool, and which has an integration to many CAD systems. But in this case, I'll show the integration here with SolidWorks. I'm going to start with a parts list. Let's build a parts list for this. And I know we already looked at this in the slide deck. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. So in real time there, I just built that parts list. There we go. These are all the parts that are identified in that CAD model. So, what might, there's a lot of things that I can do with this. Excuse me. This may also be, I may, send this to some downstream process. This is flat. It has no structure, and it has all the information about each one of the items. Okay, that was fairly simple and straightforward. This may meet your needs. Parts list. If you're working in Excel right now, chances are you're probably building a parts list. Excel doesn't give a lot of easy ways to build structure. So let's move on. Let's take a look at the next one. Let's go back to SolidWorks and build that. Let's build a single level. Okay. Now we kind of know what to expect in the single level. We're just going to take a snapshot. And you can see over here in the tree, this is where my structure will be coming from as we move along. But let's see what that single level looks like. Okay. Again, these are just the 4 items that appear at the top. So if I was, loading my manufacturing line, I would say, hey, look, you need to go get a top and a bottom, 4 screws and a circuit board, and we can assemble this. This may also, appear nicely on a drawing, depending upon what type of documentation you're building. So let's take a look at, how we might see this on a drawing. But here I've actually taken the parts list and placed it on a drawing. I could identify some balloons. I could do some other things so we can build out either a manufacturing drawing or something that's used for our customers. So there's another good use of either the single level or the parts list for basic drawing. Okay. Let's kind of move down our complexity here. Let's build ourselves a multi-level BOM. This is going to get a little more interesting. We're going to start respecting this product structure here on the side. Okay. So now we're going to see what looks like a single level, but it's going to have some structure underneath it. And like I said, this is where they start to get a little more interesting. So I might want to dive down into in the individual levels. This might be where I have some very it's more complicated or more detailed views of what my circuit board looks like. Start to load a little more data here. Yeah. And then finally, from a multi-level view is typically where we build the flattened BOM. So in OpenBOM, we have choices for, if we build a multi-level to start with, I can view it in single level, I can view it in multi-level, and I can also view it in flattened. So you think about kind of that multi-level maybe having all us being a superset, all the information that you might want to include. So once I got to do some organizing here, maybe I combine or make some other changes, quantities, and do some other things, and I'm ready to think about buying the parts for this. Now I can use in Open BOM, we happen to have the ability to kind of work down and build order BOMs and do some other things, and where we bake some of this flattened behavior in for you. But maybe you're using a tool that doesn't have production planning and other things, and you just want to build a flattened BOM. Let's take a look at that. So in this case here, we've brought together all of our all the bits and pieces, and I'm not sure what, I'm having a little trouble here with some images. We'll let those load in just a second. But where we broke these down, we picked up, there's 4 of these. I don't know where they are in my structure. It's not important to me. There's 2 of those. Again, they exist somewhere in my structure. Not important to me where they exist. And then I could take this, pass it along to my purchasing people, and they would buy each one of these. So that's an example of what the various BOM types look like in Open BOM, and how we might use, a CAD system in this example here with SolidWorks to specify how we want each one of those, to be built. So let me get back to my presentation here, and we can wrap this up. So a couple of key thoughts I'd like to present in closing. If you're new to the webinar series, go back and take a look at the earlier webinars, especially 2, 13, and 14. They're the essentials of building an effective bill of material. There are some other videos on BOM types in our blog. Also has a lot of information on single level, multi-level, etc. So a video on key concepts, regardless of what you're interested in. This is, again, a nice kind of foundational video, just a few minutes long. And then finally, the webinar playlist is here. So if you want to catch up on things, you can do that. So I did see that there, if you have any questions, could you please maybe just post them in the chat, or of course you can send them to support@openbom.com. I see someone is typing. Just 1 second here. Okay, the question is, should I just always build a multi-level BOM material? Well, that's not a bad idea. The nice thing about single level versus multi-level is that if you're building a very large assembly, multi-level takes a little bit longer. It can be a little bit harder sometimes to manage. So sometimes I'll start with a parts list that generates rather quickly because there's no real relationship management going on. Maybe I'll move to a single level as I start to add some structure and I think about what the individual major components are in my assembly. So this top level single level view is nice. And then, of course, as the rest of the design matures, maybe the board is being designed in an Altium or an Eagle or something. I can start kind of filling that in and building it out as a multi-level. Personally, myself in the end, I really like to use a multi-level. I can share those individual levels with people. Like maybe I'll share share this middle level here, this circuit board assembly, line item 4. Or maybe I just share that out with my board house, my fab house, and then don't need the rest of it. So my recommendation is ultimately you might want to think about a final version of it that's multi-level when you go into manufacturing abilities. So. Okay, so I want to thank you all for your time. We'd love to hear from you at support@openbom.com, and enjoy your week.